I hope. Let's see. Can you guys hear me? The microphone seems to be working. The video appears to be working. If anyone is watching this live, please, as in real time. If anybody's watching this in real time, please do me a favor and post it in the comment that you can actually see me. I hope that you can. As you can tell from the background, I am not at home at the moment. I am in my hotel room in Dallas. I was in DC yesterday. All right, Mr. Asa Carpenter. Oh, hell yeah. Thank you, sir. Thank you for the confirmation. Anyhow, the purpose of this particular live stream is a couple of specific things. One is I want to talk about the Strasser rifle. I don't have it with me. Like I said, I'm in a hotel in Dallas. I released a video on it a few days ago, which is on YouTube and on my local's website. I also want to talk a little bit about the Trijicon 10-mile rifle scope that I happen to have had on the Strasser. And I just released earlier today, just finished the premiere on YouTube, a video about the shooting supports. We are sort of in the beginning of the hunting season, and I am setting up for my mule deer and elk hunts that will be in November, and rethinking certain things like shooting supports, and I'll be happy to address that if there is interest. With that in mind, I spent a full day in Washington, D.C. yesterday at an SPIE photonics event. It was a one-day event aimed at policy and things like that, and I learned something interesting. For those of you who are curious about optics and photonics and their applications to the world of the military, which is sort of where my day job is. It turns out it was formed last year. There is a congressional subcommittee on optics and photonics. It was formed, I think, in October of last year. And finally, somebody recognized that pretty damn near everything that we use from a weaponry standpoint has some sort of a camera or photonic circuit, something like that, in it. Every missile, every vehicle, and very frequently more than one. So all these things that generally fall within the range of electro-optics are important. And Congress sort of paying attention, realizing, wait a second, very little of it is made here. How's that okay? So we'll see what comes out of it. It's not really relevant to what we do here, but for my day job, it's relevant that we kind of got a better idea where federal government is going to spend money, what they're going to invest in, and things like that. That was actually very interesting, and it was a fairly high level thing because there's one day of talks about funding and all that. Not the most entertaining thing in the world, but the final speech was actually by sitting senator, Senator Steve Daines from the great state of Montana. If any of you from Montana, I liked you, Senator. That was kind of interesting. Oh, Mr. Han Solo from Poland is here. Good to see you, sir. All right. Anyhow, I'll give it a couple of minutes. I usually talk for a couple of minutes before I get to my primary conversation topic. So, how many of you have any sort of familiarity with a rifle called Strasser, I think RS14? I'm really curious because until comparatively recently, I had no freaking clue this thing existed. And I gotta tell you, I think that was an absolute mistake. Okay, let's see. Can you see it? No, there we go. Anybody familiar with this guy? No. Outside of my early video, no familiarity. All right, that's what I thought. Okay, and tell us more. I will say this, guys. So when I get home next week, well, I'm gonna get home tomorrow night, but Next week is Jewish New Year, so I'll be a little bit busy. Toward the end of the week, I'll have more time. I'm gonna do a stream on locals where I can actually have a gun in my hand, and so that I can show you some of the comparisons, etc. But for now, I think pictures are going to suffice. I gotta say, guys, if you have a if you're familiar with the term bucket list stuff, this is a bucket list rifle. What do I mean by that? It's expensive, absolutely kicks ass. And people have bucket list destinations before they die. They want to go to Seychelles, I don't know, etc. I have bucket list guns, and this thing may have just moved to the top of it. To say that I'm impressed would be an understatement of the century. I gotta tell you, I'm seldom impressed. I'm sort of jaded. I've been around. I've seen a lot of guns. This thing is really interesting. It looks sort of like compared to the traditional normal rifle. Okay. But once you start looking at it more carefully and you look at how well engineered it is, you just become more and more impressed. When I first looked at it, okay, it's a nice gun. No, it's not a 99 Billy. This is a Strasser RS14 Evolution. So in a nutshell, what it is, it's more than a nice rifle. It's fucking incredible. I have a thing for takedown guns, switch barrels, that kind of thing, but they need to be done well. So what this thing is basically a receiver. They essentially have two receivers, right-handed and left-handed receivers. Okay, those are a little bit different. Then it supports a significant number of different barrels. I have a limited number of barrels. There we go. I have limited number of calibers listed here. There I have some more. You can go on the Austrian website. I looked at the US website. They don't import all of the calibers as stocking items, and there is, I think, more than this. But they don't import all of them as stocking items, but they can order anything you want from Austria if you're so interested. It seems to work with actions about 3006 length. So the one of the calibers here, which is the 10.3x68 Magnum, is a little bit longer, but all the other calibers seem to be of the 3006 length or shorter. And to switch between calibers, all you really need is a bolt head, excuse me, barrel. Let's see, I have, there you go, bolt head, barrel, and magazine. And you have a large variety of different calibers to play with. The amazing thing was that when I started shooting some groups with this thing, I only got it with one barrel. So I looked around and I realized that I no longer have a 22-50 rifle, but I still have a reasonable amount 22-50 ammo. So that seemed like a good opportunity to shoot it. So I asked for the rifle with a 22-50 barrel, and I've been messing with this thing. It kicks ass. The group size when I just shoot a group was essentially indistinguishable from if I shoot a group and remove and install a barrel between every shot. As is with the wooden stock, the way that I just showed you, it's I think just under 8 pounds. They have a few different stock options. They have some sort of a carbon fiber stock and synthetic stock, and what was the other one? Laminated wood. I think the synthetic and carbon fiber about a pound lighter, so it will be right around 7 pounds, something like that. But it's everything in this rifle is designed kind of like a Swiss clock in many ways. But when I look at it, while the tolerances are very tight, the way it is put together, I have a strong suspicion that the rifle is going to do very, very well, even in dirty, dusty, muddy conditions. It looks like a conventional rifle on the outside, but it's absolutely spectacular modern on the inside. The rifle is a straight pull. If you look at my video on it that I released about a week ago, you will see I cycle the action a few times. It is probably the fastest cycling bolt action rifle I've ever used. These particular rings that you guys are asking are from a company called Oddmount. I don't think he makes them anymore. Some of my favorite rings, they look a little bulky, but they're actually very lightweight. The particular, so RS14 Evolution has an integrated Picatinny rail up on top, so I don't need an extra base, anything like that. It's just machined into the aluminum receiver. The way the bolt works, I think it locks into the extension in the barrel. So the aluminum receiver keeps the weight light and it remains comparatively unstressed. The way the bolt locks into the barrel is really clever. If you look at this thing, and I don't know if you can see the mouse, there's this little band here. There are 4 lugs. When you lock the bolt, they basically expand radially. See here, they are a little bit expanded. They expand radially, lock into the back of the barrel. These lugs are pretty freaking massive. That thing, once it's locked up, it's not going anywhere, right? The action seems to be very strong, but on the other hand, the extraction also seemed to be very good. I had no problem extracting anything. The cycling of the bolt was perfectly smooth, but the bolt is not as bizarre of a plastic thing as is, for example, on the Blaser R8. And the Blaser is a very, very nice straight tool rifle, but now that I looked at this thing, I'll take this thing over Blaser any day, and for a variety of reasons. One is that the bolt and the lockup are really, really clever, but another one, the Blaser did this interesting thing where they tried to combine the trigger group and the magazine into one unit. Here they are separate, which really tremendously helps if you want to have a spare magazine. If you lose one, something like that, you don't really have any issues. The lug is not, so Bill is asking whether the lug is in the back of the bolt. No, the lug is in the front of the bolt. Okay. It's not odd. A lot of modern European rifles are this kind of a straight pull thing, so you don't have to turn the bolt. And I always have this concern as well. Okay, if it's a straight pull, if this bolt ever going to fly in my face? With this design, there's no way in hell you can let off around and have the bolt fly back in your face. The lockup is absolutely solid. It was really impressive. Accuracy. So I'm not the greatest shot in the world, but the way I test hunting rifles, and remember, so the one I tested is a hunting rifle. So the barrel is comparatively lightweight. Here is so what the barrel muzzle looks like. The barrel is threaded, and the threading on everything other than the 300 Blackout barrel, I think the threading is metric 14/1. That's a very, very common barrel threading in Europe, and an increasing number of different muzzle adapters exist for that. But you can kind of see it's perfectly normal hunting weight barrel, right? The way I shoot these things, I basically shoot with the front supported, back unsupported by anything other than my shoulder, and I shoot them quickly. I don't let the barrel cool. There are, I think, 7 rounds here at 200 yards, and ended up being 0.84 MOA. I shot a few groups. They were all in the same of this 0.7 to 0.9 MOA range ballpark. There was nothing particularly exotic about it. And, like on the internet, everybody shoots quarter MOA groups. But I'm not a quarter MOA shooter. If this rifle consistently, and it was consistent, if this rifle is consistently shooting under an MOA at 200 yards in my hands, that means the rifle is a lot better than that, because that's basically what I can do with the front support under comparatively normal circumstances. The important part here is that the barrel got really hot at the end of every group I shot. I did not sit there and try to cool it down, try to extract the maximum possible accuracy out of it. That was not the purpose. I was trying to test 2 things: how accurate is the rifle and how easy it is to shoot accurately. And it's scored wonderfully on both accounts. The feel and the handling is like any normal hunting rifle, but The way it is built on the inside is just remarkable. Everything you need to take this thing apart is integrated into the rifle. You don't need any extra external tools, nothing like that. There is a one little Allen wrench that's integrated into the trigger group. There's a button to press. Okay, so this is worth mentioning. I talk about this occasionally. Whenever you go online, right, everybody always shoots quarter MOA groups. Okay. I've seen some of these people shoot at the range. I don't know if they're post. I very, very seldom post group sizes, right? Because once again, you should not be judging rifle based on how I shoot, because I'm not that great of a shot, but I shoot a lot. So what happened with me, because of the overall volume that I do, I don't really have any. Every once in a while, I'll have a good day, but that's not particularly common. But I almost never have particularly bad days, right? I'm quite consistent in the way that I shoot. And I don't post groups because this is not normally I don't post groups for a simple reason. It's very easy to fake, and I don't feel like having an argument with anyone. What does this group really mean? And then on top of it, I shoot a lot offhand when nothing ever looks impressive, and people get very surprised when I'm so excited about the 4MOA group that I shot off hand standing, because for me that's very, very good. And when people think, oh, that's cut off, well, it just means they don't shoot offhand, right? I shot this rifle offhand, sitting, standing off of the tripod using a cradle with a couple of different scopes. The groups that you saw were shot off of the bench with the front support. I shoot about the same bench and prone, maybe slightly better prone. So there is that. Now there was a question here. Yeah. So that's actually not how it works. In lab testing environment, it would be a single hole. No, it wouldn't. The way you look at standard deviations of stuff, it's you do something called RSS, root sum square. So you add standard deviations. If I were to make a guess, mechanically, if you let everything cool down and fix the barrel and all that, and you have the right ammo, I was using Hornady ammo. Once again, nothing particularly exotic. This is probably a consistent 0.4, 0.5 MOA rifle, something like that. And by the by the time you add mine accuracy and the rifle's accuracy and all that, that's more or less what you get. The important point is that you take a fairly very average shooter, which is me, and give him a gun like this, and the gun does not hold him back. I've shot some guns that have excellent mechanical accuracy, but it doesn't mean that they're easy to shoot. Right, my primary rifle is something called the Fix by Q, and you guys have seen that gun many times over. One of the reasons I like that gun is not just that it's lightweight, accurate, whatever. I shoot that gun well, and I have a ton of experience with it. This Strasser RS14, I legitimately shoot this gun about as well as I can shoot. I have many other guns that I shoot frequently. They're much harder for me to shoot accurately, even though mechanically they are quite accurate. Okay. So I don't shoot such groups. Also, I have a range of 100 meters, not 100 yards. So the group I showed you was at 200 yards. For hunting rifles, I prefer to check the accuracy at 200 yards. It was not a particularly windy day, though, so it doesn't make that much difference. But it just so happens I sight these things in at 200 yards. Okay. Let's see. If you can do 5 inches at 200 yards, you can feed your family. You can probably do. So 5 inches at 200 yards from field conditions is not that simple. Okay. It's not, it's not very hard if you have a support of some sort. But that's it. Okay. Yeah, that 7-shot group, keep in mind, that 7-shot group is at 200 yards. So it's sub-MOA. Sub-MOA with me shooting it, that means the rifle can do its job. That's basically it. Let's see, where was I? Aside from that, there's just not that much. to say, other than, once again, I'm a sucker for takedown guns. The particular gun I have, and I need to send it back to the manufacturer, because the longer I hold it, the more tempted I am to buy it, and I can't afford it right now. The barrel is 22 inches, and when I took off the barrel, so the barrel is almost the exact same length as the action with the stock. So if I were, for example, to put this thing into some sort of a Pelican case, something like that for travel, basically I need to count for components that are approximately 22 inches long, right? So let's say a 24-inch case gives you an inch of foam on both sides. I can have a 24-inch long case that holds this rifle, a scope, several barrels if I need them. Let's say if you want to do Magnum barrels are 24 inches, so you need a 26-inch long case. But in a very, very compact case, you can have a very capable setup. If I were getting one, what I've been kind of doing this mental exercise, trying to figure out what calibers I would get. With 22 to 50, if I remember, I mean they have 2 to 3 300 blackout. They've got a bunch of stuff. Let me see if I can get the list of the calibers back up. Hold on, where is that thing? Just kind of looking at it. There we go. Once again, I don't think it's a complete list. I got confirmation from the US distributor, and he sent me a list of calibers that I think is longer than this, but this is close enough. So what would I get? Well, in the practical terms, if let's say I wanted to get a gun that can do a little bit of everything, I would probably end up with, for big games, something like 375 or 416 Ruger. They're both very capable calibers. Always like 375 H&H and 375 Ruger essentially duplicates the ballistics. So that would be one. If I want to use it also as a sheep gun, something like that, maybe 6.5 PRC. And something for varmints or for general practice, stuff like that. So 22 to 50 would probably be a good option. I think I saw somewhere that they have a fast twist 1.8 22 to 50 barrel as well. That could actually be very interesting caliber for pronghorn and stuff like that. Or you can always get 2 to 3 Remington or 300 blackout, etc. Next to the 300 blackout, there is a little asterisk. I think that means that this is the only barrel they have that where the muzzle is threaded 5.8 by 24. So that would be the easiest to adapt to standard US suppressors. The rest of the barrels, I think, are M14 by 1 threading. If you can't find the right calibers out of this list, you're missing something. They even have something comparatively exotic like 6XC. 243 Winchesters in there, obviously 308, 3006, all the usual stuff. If you like Euro calibers, I think 9.3 by 62 is in there. So Billy is saying that first shot in cold barrel is actually where it counts in a hunting situation. That is very true, but also I've been on a sheep hunt where in those rough conditions you keep shooting until the animal is down. So I would like to make sure that the aggregate point of aim does not shift around very much when I repeat shots. That's why I do several shots. I generally do basically 2 magazines. That's sort of my standard thing. The magazine on this thing was able to keep 3 rounds, and the reason why it was a 7-shot group is that I had one in the chamber, and then I basically loaded up the magazine twice. So if I am out hunting, I usually have a magazine in the rifle, not one in the pocket. That's sort of my near standard configuration. So 1 in the pipe and 2 magazines is 7 shots. That's why there was a 7-shot group there. That's pretty much the only, perhaps not a very good reason. Good. All right. Any other questions here? Because there is really not a huge, there's really not a huge amount else I can say about this other than it's been a while since I was as impressed by a rifle. And most amazing, like I said, so this one with the wooden stock is about 8 pounds. With the synthetic or carbon fiber stock, we're talking about 7 pounds. 7 pounds, 6.5 PRC is a perfectly respectable mountain rifle. Now, same 7-pound rifle, 7 or somewhere in the ballpark there, with 377 Ruger, or 375 Ruger, excuse me. That would wake you up. So that would be interesting to see how much kick that really has. But yeah. So I don't know. Something tells me that shooting this thing with a proper dangerous game cartridge might not be for the faint of heart. But on the other hand, there's a fairly soft recoil pad. The stock geometry is pretty comfortable, but I shot it with a very mild recoiling caliber. So I don't know if I ever buy one. I plan to get one of the barrels in a larger caliber, and I'll let you know how it all goes. Let's see, we're about 25 minutes into it. Brooks Precision, how much are the barrels? Do you know offhand? I think they're around $1,000 or $1,200, something like that. But Strasser has a website called Strasser USA.com, I think. I'm looking at Strasser-USA.com. And let's see. If I can't immediately see it all, I will not. They have a dealer list, but a lot of people also buy directly from Strasser USA, and they'll just send it to your local FFL. The Strasser USA, I think, is in Alabama somewhere, Montgomery, I want to say, or something like that. And interestingly, I don't see immediately where the barrel price is. Okay, there it goes. There's some information on the barrel. I know it's some sort of a the Strasser is an Austrian company. I know that the barrel is made in Germany, probably Lothar Walter, but I'm not really entirely sure. Yeah, I don't see barrel price right offhand. I thought it was in $1,000 range. I somehow remember that. I could be wrong. Where was I? Yeah. I'm old and jaded, and I'm just having a hard time communicating how impressed I was with this thing. Okay, it's a cold forged. I have no clue. Composites, carbon. So I have not seen any composite barrels, or the barrels are regular steel barrels. I don't know if they do composites. I didn't check. Unless I'm really trying to go light. I don't know. Composite barrels require somewhat different profile because they're usually a little bit thicker, and all the forends and stuff I saw from them are designed for more or less the same barrel profile. But honestly, if you're getting the accuracy you want, the rifle is light enough. I don't know. That having been said, so my 308 fix does have a carbon fiber barrel, so there is that. I've only seen normal barrels. Once again, since I do not know for sure who makes them. Since I don't know for sure who makes them, I don't know if they are hammer forged or not. I will say this: I have shot with high quality barrels made by 3 common manufacturing methods: hammer forged, button rifled, and cut rifled. And for a hunting rifle, even a very accurate hunting rifle, it makes no difference what method was used to manufacture the barrel. It makes a difference who made it. Okay. That's it. If it was made by a company that knows what they're doing, makes no difference what method they use. The barrel is going to shoot, most likely. Billy. Bolt mated, that's a lot of money. No, so the bolt doesn't need to be matched to the barrel. The quality of manufacturing of this thing, the tolerances they hold, are just remarkable. There are 3 types of bolt heads: standard, magnum, and mini. And any magnum barrel will work with any magnum bolt head. They don't need to be matched. They don't need to be kept together. The way the manufacturing tolerances of these rifles are, if let's say you want to have every magnum caliber they offer, you can buy every barrel in one magnum bolt head, and it will all work together without any issues. This whole business of matching the barrel to the bolt, I don't want to say it's necessarily antiquated, but it's well within the manufacturing tolerances of modern equipment. And I don't remember, but the way these guys hold their tolerances, makes no difference. Okay. Any other questions before I move on and talk a little bit about the scope? Anything else about the gun? Okay, let's see. Oh yeah, so magazines. Once again, so there are 3 types of barrels: Magnum, Standard, and Mini. Mini basically is 2 to 3 bolt head. So there are 3 bolt heads, and I think that we end up with 4 different magazines. Magazines are basically not staggered. There's each round sits right on top of the other one. The Mini are the 2 to 2, 2 to 3, and 300 blackout. And the standard are all the various, 308, 306 type cartridges. I think the 22 to 50 that I have is the only sort of a standard magazine that's a little bit different, because 22 to 50 is a little bit on the short side. And then there is a Magnum magazine that presumably works with all the different Magnum rifles. I haven't seen all the magazines. I will make the point. I'm sure I'll run into Strasser at some trade show somewhere to go and get my hands on the rest of the stuff. I've only seen the 22 to 15. That's what I spent time with. My choice of a scope that I put in this thing was really in many ways driven by the caliber, but also I just happened to have had this scope from Trijicon, and I wanted to play with it, and I wanted an accurate rifle to do that. The scope was a Trijicon Tenmile. Interesting. So Billy, for hunting and for F-class, maybe a difference there. That's F-class money you're talking, so I may be a little confused. No, I'm not. It's not an F-class rifle. It's a hunting rifle. It's let me put the rifle back up. I don't think I said anything about F-class, did I? There you go. It is not an F-class rifle. It's a high-end switch barrel hunting rifle. Okay. And I will have to admit I have no clue how much F-class rifles cost, since I have approximately 0 interest in F-class. But no, it's a hunting rifle. That having been said, it's accurate enough that I probably would not hesitate to take one to something like an RL Hunter competition, which is actually an interesting idea. Maybe I should pick one up and go do an RL Hunter competition with it, just for shits and giggles. Maybe not. We'll see. Okay. All right, where was I? Scopes. So I put a Trijicon 10 mile on it. I did have the Saturn S8 on it for a little bit, because once again I need to test the scope. And Trijicon 10 mile is kind of an interesting design. It's a front focal plane 3 to 18x44 with a nice 3 reticle. It's made in Japan by Light Optics Works, but the scope looks a little bit different because of how long it is. Okay. It is approximately 15 inches. In the picture that you see, it looks longer than it is because I have the sunshade attached. Okay. But the scope, despite being fairly long, is not hugely heavy. The scope itself is about, I think, 24, 25 ounces, something like that, which I think is very good for a nice front focal plane scope like that. Huh. Can you guys see it well, or how when I zoom in and out, it actually changes size? How interesting. Okay, I'm looking, so there you go. So the way the turrets are set up, to me, the scope looks very similar to the first generation 6-hour Tango 6, and it kind of looks a rebirth of that, just a little bit lighter. The elevation turret is exposed. It's 8 milliradian per turn. The windage turret is covered, which is nice. And on the opposite side there is the side focus and integrated illumination. Illumination is a little bit unusual of the well-reputable scopes. It's very uncommon to have both green and red illumination, although there are a few like this. So this one has 5 levels of red illumination, 5 levels of green. I went and played with it a little bit. It was actually worked surprisingly nicely, and the illumination levels were reasonably well worked out. The elevation turret does have a zero stop, and the way the zero stop works is sort of the standard light optics works. Zero stop, you see this little drum over here. That's only part of the elevation turret where you need tools. The actual outside turret comes off without any tools. And then you kind of loosen the ring here. You drop down the little drum that serves as a zero stop like this. And now it is set in. You attach the turret on top, so reset it to 0, and you're off to the races. Okay. Oh, there we go. Mr. Carpenter just got that same scope. Yeah, I was quite impressed with how light it is, and honestly, I like the scope quite a lot. There are a couple of things about it that are not my favorite, but on balance, I can recommend the scope quite comfortably. So where is it weak and where is it strong? I had a spec table somewhere here for the scope. There we go. So let me add a spec table, and we'll talk about that for a minute. Hold on. There we go. You should be able to see a specification table now. There we go. Okay. So if you look at the spec table carefully, I didn't have all of these scopes on hand. I always like to put together a few designs that are somewhat similar side by side. The two scopes that I did have on hand were the tracked Toric 2.5 to 15 by 44 and the Trijicon Tenmile 3 to 18 by 44. Both have a 6-time magnification ratio. Track goes to a slightly lower magnification end on the bottom end, 2.5 versus 3 for the 10-mile. I think the tracked is a slightly newer design, but it is about 4 ounces heavier, although it is 1 inch shorter. The field of view when set on the same magnification is about the same, exit pupil about the same. The tracked does have a lot more adjustment range. The adjustment range of the 10-mile is fairly limited. It's right around 18 milliradian. But I will say that for the use that I had in mind for this thing, it's enough. I mean, if I get one, if you put it on a 20 MOA base, you'll have most of this elevation available. But honestly, if I get single turn of the elevation turret out of it, in this case, it's about 8 milliradian, it's enough for most standard purposes. The weaknesses of the Trijicon really are just a couple. Well, one is obviously, as we just discussed, somewhat limited elevation range. Another one is, excuse me. Bloody hell. I'm having a hard time shaking the freaking virus. Hold on, guys. My apologies about that. I walked away from this freaking virus I had a couple of weeks ago with a nasty sinus infection. Flying with that thing is interesting. You know, when you go up in the air, you had your bone structure expands slightly, and your sinuses get filled with gunk. And then when the plane lands and your skull tries to contract, you quickly find out that liquids are not compressible. It feels like your head is going to explode. I do not recommend it. Where was I? Yeah, Tenmile. So strengths and weaknesses. Strength, the scope is fairly light. Optically, it is quite good. Illumination is fairly nicely worked out. The reticle is quite respectable. Let me see if I can pull up an image. It is a kind of last generation 3 reticle. Stylistically, it is probably sort of close to let's see, there's green illuminated and red illuminated. Let me see if you guys can see it. There we go. Let's project that. This thing that's sharing a little bit differently and keeps on asking me. I'll say I want to share a screen, and it asks me whether I'm sure I want to share a screen. I say yes. And it asks me, are you really, really absolutely sure you want to share your screen? I will. I confirm. And that's me. Really, really, really certain you want to share a screen. Here is what it looks like with green illumination on. This is during the day at the range where I normally shoot and do a lot of plate shooting. I think the targets we're looking at are about 300 yards away, something like that. I don't remember for sure. Okay. This is the same thing with red illumination. Okay. So basically, it's a 0.2 milliradian tree, but out on the. Let's see if I can zoom in a little bit. Right. So it's a 0.2 milliradian tree, but on the primary, it's 0.5 milliradian holds in both vertically and horizontally. Small floating dot. Everything works reasonably well. The reticle is not the newest, but it is perfectly reasonable. There's nothing especially wrong with it, and as a general purpose crossover reticle, I did not have really any issues with it. Okay. Other weakness, as well as I said, the scope is pretty long. So if you decide to put a clip on in front of it, you're not going to have a ton of space. And the field of view, comparatively speaking, is somewhat narrow. Now it's not super narrow. It's roughly par for the course. Par for the course. The Toric has similar field of view, but Toric does have more eye relief. Tenmile has a little bit less eye relief, but not by much. If you look at this, though, most of the currently made Japanese scopes have ballpark similar field of view and eye relief. In this table, the one major exception here is the Vortex PST Gen 2, which has a little bit less eye relief at about 3.4 inches, lots more field of view. Generally, one of the things that PST Gen 2 scopes do really, really well is provide very nice and wide field of view. Okay. Optically, how does it stack up? So it's not the latest generation of light optics works glass. And like most scopes from previous generations, actually quite nicely worked out. Contrast is reasonable, color balance is neutral. I didn't see any weird colors. Flare is reasonably well controlled. It's a $1,500 scope, and it performs kind of like a $1,500 scope in terms of overall optical mechanical performance. While I enjoyed the scope, yes, it is FFP. While I enjoyed the scope quite a bit, I can't say that it shoots way above its way above its price, but it's not a bad bargain either. And if you are able to find it on a discount, etc., I would seriously consider picking it up. On balance, optically, looking at it next to the tracked Toric 2.5 to 15, I thought the Toric optically was slightly better, but a toric has sort of a near fatal flaw in the sense that it is not the reticle on a toric is not illuminated. And what that means in practical terms is that on low powers, the reticle starts getting thin. On a 10-mile, on low power, the reticle does start getting a little bit thin, but then the illumination really helps. And I did not have any issues shooting with it offhand on 3 power and low light, with the reticle illumination helping quite a bit, actually. Now, one thing I don't like is that the entire tree and everything is illuminated, which I think is a mistake. In low light situations, I vastly prefer to either have just a center dot or kind of like a crosshair illuminated. That's how many modern designs do it. And the scope that ultimately I use in this class, my favorite scope is probably the Razer HDL HT 4.5 to 22 by 50, and that's how that one is illuminated. I think that is the way to go. But at least the Tenmile has an illumination. The Toric 2.5 to 15 does not. Now I use it. It sits on my precision muzzle loader. I use it also for hunting, and the Toric works really nicely. But it could really use some illumination. Okay. That is largely it on the Trijicon 10-mile. I like the scope overall. If you're not planning to put a clip on in front of it, the length doesn't really matter. I really appreciate the lightweight. If I was a Trijicon, if I were looking to update something like that, I'd probably be looking to maybe add some reticle options and maybe possibly switch to a turret that does 10 mil radian per turn. The scope does not have a ton of adjustment. It's just nice to have 10 mil radian. Okay. So that's roughly that with a 10-mile. Okay, Mr. Han Solo is going. The 3-18 by 44 is the kind I would go with for my next class. Thinking of Meopt, I was impressed with the clear picture. For me, it's the Zeiss Swarovski glass. Yeah, Zeiss Swarovski make nice glass, but honestly, high quality Japanese glasses. This is very, very good. There's no shortage of nice rifle scopes. For general purpose use, it's very hard to go wrong with a high quality 3-15, 3-18, 2.5 to 15, something like that. I do prefer front focal plane, so Swarovski and Zeiss don't offer too much with the front focal plane. The way I shoot, and I live out west here at mountains, we have fairly long shots. I'd like to be able to use the reticle to hold for the wind, and I don't want to worry what magnification I'm on. So I'm very much strongly in the front focal plane camp because of that. What kind of a muzzle loader do I use? Well, let me see if I can find a picture for you. The muzzle loader I use, I should have a couple of pictures of it together with a 10-mile. I do actually. Let me show you a picture. Let's see. I'm going to try to share again, so give me a moment while it's asking me 28 times whether I'm really, really, really ready to share the screen. Here we go. So on the left here is the Strasser RS14 with the Trijicon on it. And on the right is the custom Encore with the track Toric 2.5 to 15 on it. The Thompson Center Encore itself, the frame, etc., is perfectly normal. What is special here is the barrel. This is a Brooks barrel that was made for me by Arrowhead Rifles. It uses what's something called NSR bullets. These are pointy bullets, and they are sized to fit the bore very precisely, so I don't need a sabot or anything like that. I end up with a pointy aluminum tip 275 grain muzzle loader bullet that gets moving from this particular Thompson Center Encore, from this particular 26-inch Brooks barrel. It that's moving right around 2,400 foot per second. So 275 grain bullet at 2,400 foot per second. It accounted for an elk last year, which I'm pretty happy about. And as far as muzzle loaders go, I'm good. I really like this one. It works well for me. Here I am. 10 mile. Yeah. So as I was saying, if I was Trijicon, maybe I'd look at updating the reticle a little bit, maybe 10 millimeter turret. But aside from that, there's really very little wrong with the scope. To get wider field of view, you need to make significant changes. And once you start getting into the wider field of view, everything starts getting a little bit heavier. I will say for all these 3-18, 3-15 moderately priced scopes, one of the problems they all have is that Philippine-made Vortex PST Gen 2 3-15 by 44 is really good. And it really puts a lot of pressure on many Japanese-made scopes, simply because it is very capable, has very good field of view, Vortex supports it very well, and all that. My only real beef with the PST Gen 2 is that the reticle the Vortex currently has in it, which is a BR7C, I believe. It's not my favorite reticle design. It's perfectly functional. A lot of people clearly like it. I am not a huge fan. I think XLR2 that they use in the Razer HDL HD scope is much better. And the new BR7D they use in the new Razers, I think, is also better. But aside from that, just on the merits, PST Gen 2 at 900-ish or a little bit less, oftentimes is very competitive with the Japanese scopes that are a little bit more expensive, both in terms of core performance and in terms of the feature set. That having been said, the 10 mile it does resolve a little bit better, although the field of view, as I said, is narrower, and this design has been around for a while, so it has proven to be quite robust overall. So no knock on the 10 mile. I was very pleasantly surprised with the scope. Okay. All right, guys, we're about 52 minutes into it. I didn't have any sort of a specific time budget for today's live stream. Just wanted to really cover the Strasser rifle and the Trijicon rifle scope. I'll hang out for a couple more minutes and maybe talk a little bit about the tripods that I just released a video on, the Javelin bipod, Spartan Precision tripods, tripods and stuff. Oh, Mr. Northwest Guns is here. How are you, Derek? Good to see you, sir. You just missed the fun part. This fancy rifle and a very respectable scope. You'll just have to come visit and I'll show you. But anyhow, where was I? Yeah, one of the things that I am sort of rethinking is how I'm going to do shooting supports during hunting season. I was not entirely excited how it all worked out for me last year. So I'm going to do differently. I'm going to, for precision stuff, I use heavy duty tripods primarily from Field Optics Research, and I like them a lot. That use nice bowl top tripods, ARCA connection and all sort of stuff. And for precision, I have no interest or desire to switch. But for hunting, this stuff is a little bit clunkier than I like and a little bit heavier than I like. So I've been spending a lot of time experimenting, doing research. And as I said in the video, and do watch the video if you haven't seen it yet. As I said in the video, is so for hunting purposes, I'm basically looking as in the following way, right? So I live up in the mountains here. Worst case, I may have to take a 500-yard shot. I don't know if I'm willing to take a shot longer than that on game, maybe in ideal conditions. And out here, there's no such thing as ideal conditions. It's always weird. So 500 yards. The gun has to be steady enough on my chosen support system. to not get in my way for a 500 yard or closer, hopefully closer, shot. And this season, I think I'm going to switch for both optics support and rifle support to this magnetic interface that the Javelin Pilots Spartan Precision uses. Once again, the video went live about an hour and a half ago or so. So please watch it and ask questions, and I'll be happy to address them. Okay. All right, Derek is gonna come visit and bring his 243 Ackley improved with him. Presumably Ackley improved because regular 243 doesn't burn out barrels fast enough, right, Derek? But that would definitely be interesting. All right, gentlemen. I'm gonna give it a couple more minutes. If there's anything else you want me to cover, I'll be happy to stick around, and if not, I will just as happily bid you good night and turn in. My day today started at 4 in the morning in Washington, D.C. Okay, Mr. Solo from Poland. Thank you for sticking around. Really do appreciate it. And it's morning up your way, so very early morning. Have a good day. Okay. Where was I? Yeah, so my day started in Washington, D.C. at 4 in the morning. Had to drag my ass out of bed, make it to the airport. Made it to Texas, spent the day in the office, and this is how I'm wrapping things up. Yeah, for sheep hunting here in Wyoming, which is a once-in-a-lifetime hunt, you best be confident at 500 yards. I fully agree. I got a chance to go on a sheep hunt about a year and a half ago, 2 years now, a year and a half, more like a year and a half. Year and a half ago with Vortex, or that hunt though, not Bighorn. Up not too far from the Mexican border, a bit east of El Paso, about an hour and a half from El Paso, something like that. And I got Nodad sheep. I've talked about that in the past, and that was about a 450-yard shot. That was done with a fix, with the 308 factory ammo, but that particular ammo happened to be freakishly accurate in the fix. And once again, this is something I talked about earlier in the video. There are accurate guns, and then there are guns that are easy to shoot accurately, and they're not always the same thing. And if you are dealing with a fairly lightweight gun, a lightweight bolt gun that's easy to shoot accurately is even less common. So that's something that I don't think gets enough coverage. But one of the things I like about the fix is that it's easy to shoot accurately, right? One of the things I like about the Strasser is that it's easy to shoot accurately, right? 308. Now that's balls. It happened to be a gun I have a lot of mileage with, and that I shoot well. And that particular ammo that I was using, it's a 168 grain Burger bullet. It is stupid accurate, and standard deviation on that on that load is well into the single digits. There wasn't a huge amount of wind. I had nice stable prone shooting position, looking from shooting from one mountain to the other. I had a good amount of time to settle in, and honestly, yeah, it took one shot, and that goat was down. Pulverized its heart. I have a strong suspicion that it was beginner's luck, but as you can imagine, I stood up there, looked those guides straight in the eyes, and said, "What did you expect?" Now that took balls because I had buck fever going left, right, and sideways. Every once in a while, when I do make a really, really good shot, I am not shy about taking credit for it and saying, "Oh yeah, that's normal. That's just a normal day in office for me." All right, Mr. Northwest Guns. Is the Athlon RS ETR worth the money? Well, it depends on which one. I have quite a lot of mileage with the 4.5 to 30 by 56 and with the 1 to 10 by 24. Both are pretty nice scopes, obviously very different ones. Which one did you mean? They also have a 3-18x50, but I have less mileage with that. The 4.5 to 30x56, I assume that's the one you mean. It's actually a very nice scope. To date, it's probably still the best or close to it. Yeah, 4.5 to 30. That's to date, that's probably the best overall precision Chinese-made scope out there. I've seen a couple of them. I thought they were very good, and I was not super excited about the reticle over the years, but I think last year, um, Athlon introduced a new reticle called something 6, APRS 6, something like that. Let me find the reticle picture, and that's actually a good reticle. I like it. It's nice and consistent. It doesn't do anything stupid. Okay, it's nice, simple base 2 reticle. It's not that simple. It's a 3 reticle. Let me figure out what it's called. Why do I not see it? APRS6 reticle. That is reticle manual. Okay. Let me see if that's the one. I think it's APRS6. Yes. So, yeah, APRS6 mil reticle in an Athlon Era CTR 4.5 to 30x56 is probably, on balance, the best overall precision scope I have yet seen to come out of China, but there's several new ones coming up that are quite good. But it is a good scope, and if you have a chance to play with one, you'll like it. I think you will. Billy, that's my go-to 308. I already knew that there was no wind. Good for you. Yeah, there wasn't a huge amount of wind. If there was, complicated gusty wind, I don't know if I would have taken that shot with a 308. But the ship wasn't moving, wasn't a huge amount of wind. It was a perfectly viable shot. I'm not terribly adventurous with this kind of stuff. One of the reasons I was looking at the Strasser RS14 is that I've been kind of looking around at 6.5 PRC or similar rifles, just to have a better ship gun. The guys at Q at some point were going to make the Mega Fix that would, a slightly larger action fix that would be able to do 6.5 PRC and similar stuff, but they haven't yet. And so I kind of started looking at the options if I have an opportunity, if I have an opportunity to do something like that again, what rifle would I take? Given my tastes tend to be fairly expensive, by the time you're done building a custom 6.5 PRC rifle, you're sort of in the same basic price range as the Strasser RS14, which I think is, with one barrel, it runs about $5,500, which is expensive, of course. But once again, by the time you're done building a fairly lightweight, high quality hunting rifle, you're sort of in that price range anyway. And this one is takedown, convertible to other calibers, and all that. The 308 is not an ideal ship gun, but it'll work if you know what you're doing. Dennis Ross, opinion on Trijicon Credo 2 to 10, 2 to 10 by 36. A really nice scope. I like it quite a lot. Good reticle, good illumination, good build quality, nice Japanese scope, very useful magnification range. I like the smallish objective, really good depth of field because of it. I think it's a very underrated scope. So if you want something like a DMR-ish scope, that one with an offset red dot can be a very, very good choice for a DMR type rifle. DMR, for those who don't know, stands for Designated Marksman Rifle. What else you got, guys? Jesus, my buddy Art is sending me pictures from Alaska of the two moose they were cutting off. For fuck's sake, I need to go to Alaska. Oh, Jesus. Oh well. That's interesting. It seems that 307mm mag are the most popular sheep rifles. 300 Magnum will whether be perhaps. I don't know. 7mm Magnum would be an interesting option. I think 6.5 PRC, given the high quality of 6.5mm bullets out there, is probably, I think, where the sweet spot for sheep might be. I'm also not a glutton for punishment, so I don't know if I'd necessarily want to carry a very large gun, some sort of unnecessarily large caliber with me, but it's always a possibility. I do have a 300 WSM and a comparatively lightweight gun, but that one is a lever gun, which is it's fairly accurate, but I don't think the trigger is quite good enough to be a proper sheep gun. Well, that's interesting. Mr. Tata goes 7 PRC and says that it's coming. Be patient. That would actually be a very interesting option. I like, once again, with 7mm, there is a good range of bullets. I do own a very accurate 280 Remington. It's a little bit heavier than I would have preferred to carry up mountain, but 280 Remington is actually capable in the modern action loaded to normal pressures. Is a very capable sheep gun as well. It's not going to be as fast as 7 PRC, but it's perfectly reasonable. So one of the things I'm always exploring is that with some bullets you can push velocities without any pressure comparatively high, and one of them is a company called Badlands Precision out of South Dakota, North Dakota, one of the Dakotas. They have this interesting bullet profile, an aluminum tip. They are monolithic, somewhat light for caliber bullets, and the bearing surface on those bullets is a little bit lower than on conventional design. In my 308, where I live with Badlands Precision bullets without any hard bolt lifts, any pressure signs, anything, my 308 is supersonic at 1200 yards with 150 grain bullet. 280 Remington even further than that. So, Ulrich here. Good to see you, sir. If your wind reading is if it's hard to beat a 7mm PRC or Magnum, that is very correct, but 6.5 PRC is also in that same general range as well. Look, for anything like sheep hunting, something like that, you want to set things up so that in difficult environmental conditions, you want to give yourself as much margin as possible while not while have something that you can actually carry uphill. It's not going to beat you up too much. So this type of caliber is generally of interest to me. The things that of most interest to me, I'll be honest with you, is stuff like 277 Fury, right, where you can have a comparatively conventional sized round run at higher pressure. It can run at high velocity. The high pressure 277 Fury stuff is easily comparable in terms of ballistics to 6.5 PRC or upcoming 7 PRC, stuff like that, or to 6.8 Western, right? That is one of the reasons I haven't yet bought a 6.5 PRC, because I'm kind of looking at 277 Fury, trying to see if that is something I want to mess with higher pressures and all that sort of stuff. Mr. Hogan, 280 Remington AI. Yeah, I've thought about it. Like I said, I have a very accurate 280 Remington, but it's fairly old and I've shot it a lot. If I manage to shoot out the barrel, I might set it back and rechamber it to actually improved version of 280 Remington. Well, that's an interesting question. What is your favorite scope for accuracy testing, load development? Honestly, I don't have an accurate favorite scope for accuracy testing, load development, for several reasons. One is that I'm not a magnification hog. I don't require a huge amount of magnification. And honestly, where I live in the summer, frequently there's enough mirage where I wouldn't be able to use very high magnification anyway. So I tend to use whatever I happen to have at hand, or whatever I happen to be testing, as long as I'm reasonably confident in the scope. If this rifle normally has something a little bit lower magnification on it, or then I'll put something on it. I always have a few high magnification 5-25 or similar scopes hanging around. I always have a March 5-42x56 that I've used for a lot of load development. I have a Tangent 5-25, but honestly, I don't shoot them usually at very high magnification. The biggest reason I use March 5-42x56 for this kind of stuff quite a lot, other than the fact that I have a couple of them and they're very good, is that I don't have to mess with spotters, stuff like that. I do most of my shooting around 12-15 power, something like that. But the nice thing with the March is that if I'm shooting groups at a couple of 100 yards, sometimes more, most of my accuracy testing, etc., for load development, stuff like that, happens at 200 yards. With the March, I just dial up the magnification, look at bullet holes. I don't need to deal with spotters, stuff like that. That's basically the biggest advantage. But the actual shooting that I do is done at comparatively moderate magnifications. All right, Mr. Tata, Lashana Tova to you too, sir. Starting Sunday night is Rosh Hashanah. It's a Jewish New Year. So I might actually turn off all my electronics for a day or so. I'm not a particularly religious guy, but I enjoy the holidays. I have two small kids. It's sort of time to spend with family and think about things that are bigger than we are. So, thanks, sir. Mr. Fightmaster. Thanks. That's exactly what I was looking for. Yeah, glad to help. One of the things that, so the people who do bench rest, etc., they love very high magnification scopes, and I'm really impressed that they can use them. I do not shoot better on very high magnification. But once again, as we've explored earlier in this live stream, I'm not exactly the world's greatest shot. But I'm analytically inclined, so I went and tested this assertion, and I know that I generally shoot my best groups in around 15 power. So that's what I use. Billy, that's an interesting question. Have you explored the intricacies of scope height as pertaining to dead AMPOI? I'm not entirely sure what you mean. I've explored scopes set up at different heights quite extensively. There's no real rocket science to it. Accuracy is accuracy. I'm not entirely sure. I think what you mean is there are people who are saying that if you mount a scope high, your maximum point blank range, that maybe that's what you mean, is effectively longer. That's basically nonsense. It just depends on how you define the deviation that you allow for the maximum point blank range. If you mean something else, please explain. I'll be happy to address it. The whole business with the scope mounting height, I think it's a little bit overblown. In the old days, people always used to say mount it as low as possible, but honestly, that was primarily driven by stocks that were designed for use with iron sights, and too many of those stock shapes kind of have been persisting for a long time, although comparatively few people use iron sights, let's say on hunting rifles, stuff like that. I always set up stocks for the way that was comfortable for me, right? We're all built a little bit differently, and the way I hold the rifle is a little bit different. The way to shoot accurately, one of the important things for shooting accurately and for maintaining maintaining your ability to shoot accurately over the longer strings of fire is to minimize the stress on your neck and your lower jaw, so that your head and your neck are not going to be perfectly relaxed, but they need to be as relaxed as they can be. So for a given stock configuration, that's one of the reasons I like adjustable stocks and stuff like that. One of the many reasons I like the FX BQ so much. I set up the stock for me. I see where my head ends up, and then I'll set up the scope to match my shooting position. Excuse me, not the other way around. I don't adapt my shooting position to match the scope. I figure out how I'm gonna hold, how I like holding this thing, how it is comfortable for me, and then I adjust how the scope is mounted to match that. Oh, there you go. So Billy, point blank range, yes. Point blank range does not depend on your scope mounting height. That's basically nonsense. When you define your point blank range, you need to look at your scope axis, basically your sighting axis, and you need to basically figure out how to where to set it in, etc., so that for, let's say, I don't know, if the vital zone in an animal is, I don't know, 6 inches, right? You want to figure out at what distance to sight in, so the bullet always stays within 3 inches of your line of sight, right? Within 3 inches of the line of sight basically means that at its highest point it goes 3 inches above, and then lowest point, and then it drops 3 inches below, and that's basically the extent of your point blank range. It does not depend on scope height. Now, where you need to sight this thing in for this particular point blank range, excuse me, that will slightly depend on the scope mounting height. But the actual distance to point blank range does not, because the trajectory of the bullet is not the exact path at which the bullet travels is not affected by scope mounting height. I hope this is making sense. There was a guy from Oregon on 24-hour Campfire who was proliferating this bullshit, but he's basically a brain dead moron. I don't remember his login. He's been running around with this idea for a long time. When I say that he's a brain dead moron, I don't try to be offensive. It's more like a medical diagnosis, really, more than anything else. All right. Let's see. Did I miss anything? I'm gonna kind of scan through the comments, see if there's anything that I glossed over. And yeah, so there was a comment here about 6.8 Western from Mr. Tata. Mr. Tata, I think, lives just 3 or 4 hour drive from me. We'll need to find the time somehow to have to get together and talk guns. This is kind of interesting. I'm trying to remember. So 6.8 is just 277, and I had it in mind for quite a long time to glance a little bit at 6.8 Western and see if it offers a substantial performance advantage over something like 277 Fury. 277 Fury runs at much higher pressure. Okay, there we go. That's some weird ass history. Okay, so 6.8 Western is basically to 7 Winchester short Magnum. Okay, that's fine. All right, I'm not seeing anything useful here. How many of you guys have a 6.8 Western chambered gun? Anyone? Anyone at all? Any thoughts on the cartridge? Okay, there we go. So 6.8 Western is lots of words, not a lot of information, as always. It's very interesting. Everything I look at to look at 6.8 Western, they spend 28 pages talking about 270 Winchester. Okay. For the love of God, all I need is bullet weight and velocity. I am not seeing anything here, so I'll have to look it up a little bit and see. Okay. Okay, so 6.8 Western is a 165 grain bullet at about 3,000 foot per second. 277 Fury is about a lighter bullet at same velocity. Okay, so it's not quite the same. Okay, interesting. Was it a Remington that you took that ship with by chance? No. The gun that I took the ship with was a Fix by Q. Actually, I should have a magazine somewhere here with the pictures that I took there. Hold on, I'll just see what I can find. Oh, there we go. So that went into this year's precision rifle shooter. I should have a picture here. It's on my computer somewhere, but I need to look for it. And here I can just pop. Oh, there we go. Let's hope you guys can see this. So that's the rifle. That is the Fix by Q and 308. And most definitely not a Remington. Genuinely not a big Remington fan, to put it mildly. That's a good question. Do you use any barrel spud type collimator bore sighter? So yes, I do occasionally, but not the kind that you guys have access to, because for my day job, we do very sophisticated versions of these types of bore sighters for the military. And if I really want to use one, I just borrow one for work and go mess with it. And with that one, I can sight stuff in. I can line up the barrel to the scope using the tools that I have, well within, I don't know, quarter MOA if I'm so inclined. Basically, well within the click accuracy of the scope. I think that's probably a better way of saying it. Billy, I'm sorry, that was not what I was trying to convey. My fault. No, I didn't think you were, right? But since I started talking about it, I just remembered that I've seen that done. I've seen that discussed on different forums and stuff like that. Okay. I look at 6.8 Western as sort of a 270 PRC. It's not a bad way to look at it. It looks like it is essentially that. I don't know if there is any really too much practical performance difference between 6.8 Western, 6.5 PRC, and stuff like that. Looking at the specs, they may be a little bit, but they're probably the noise. If you use a high quality bullet that has consistent BC shot to shot and low standard deviation and practice with your gun, I don't think there's a ton of difference between them. I'm somewhat partial to 6.5 caliber bullets because there's just so many of them that are exceedingly consistent. But bullet manufacturing overall is getting better. To be fair, I don't think I would have any. I don't think I would have a hard time finding a good load with the 6.5 or 6.8 or 7mm bullet or anything along those lines. Mr. Sergeant, I really enjoy your videos. Thank you, sir. I do appreciate you saying that. Edward Hogan Bushnell, 743333, has been invaluable to me in diagnosing problems with mounts and tracking, etc. Yeah, I don't know what that Bushnell is. I assume it's some sort of a barrel type collimator. They can be extremely useful. I don't use them, once again, because I have access to different stuff. I have an optical collimator at home that I can put a scope on and test. Tracking, I have bore sight tools we make for the military that I can borrow and use if I need to. Now, they don't work with all calibers, right? But I do have 30 caliber adapters, and I shoot a lot of 30 caliber guns. With modern, I will say this, with modern high quality guns and high quality mounts, I see increasingly fewer issues that need to be resolved. So it's not very common that I have mount issues. I do test a lot of scopes, and occasionally there are some issues with tracking, and those I go with put an optical collimator at home and straighten all that out. Okay, Billy says, wow, I assume that I was referring to my ship picture. Thank you, sir. I do appreciate it. All right. Why the cold shoulder with a 700 action? Please, you don't have to answer. I respect it. So there is very little that I'm not willing to answer. I'll be honest with you. So Remington, well, now it went bankrupt, and we'll see. Remington for decades was a horrible company that made horrible, cheap, badly made stuff that needed lots of work and stuff to make shoot well. But it did create an ecosystem where a bunch of Remington footprint actions that were created by the manufacturers worked really, really well. I have not had good luck with Remington guns, and the last straw was when Remington bought Marlin, and in the course of several months managed to destroy one of my favorite lever actions. I own one Remington. I have an 870 shotgun. It's old and it works well. Aside from that, there isn't a Remington out there that I would touch with a 10-foot pole. Now that it's been sold off, and all that remains of it really is just the name. Maybe I'll change my mind eventually, but for now, I am in no rush. Just didn't like Remington products. There isn't anything that I can think of that Remington did that I have anything particularly good. Just that I can say anything particularly good about. There was a lot of stuff that Remington did and that other people fixed. That, yes, Remington, straight out of the factory, in my experience, has been almost uniformly crap. Now, other people have clearly had good shooting guns from Remington, but I don't think I've ever seen a good shooting Remington straight out of the factory that didn't need tinkering. I can go buy a ticker, take it, slap a scope on it, sight everything, and go hunting and be confident. Never ever would I have had such a confidence with the Remington. All right, guys. There we go. I'm a huge Marlin fan. I totally agree. So Remington buys Marlin. A few months later, I go to SHOT Show. The guns, first of all, they buy Marlin and say, "Oh yeah, we're not gonna touch it. We're just gonna own it." Right? 3 months later, they close the facility in Connecticut, move Marlin lever gun manufacturing to upstate New York, Ilion, something like that, wherever the hell they were. Right? And some of the first Remington factory made Marlin, excuse me, lever guns. They bring them to show. There was such a piece of shit. I cut my hand on that thing just trying to cycle the action at SHOT Show, and that was the best they could make. They brought that to SHOT Show, right? It was so ridiculous. So yeah, I was, the only thing that is really truly amazing about Remington is that it didn't go bankrupt earlier. Okay. All right. Let's see. I was looking through the comments to see if there's anything particular that I missed, and I think I covered everything. Yeah, I think that's about right. All right, guys. If there's anything else, I'm gonna take one more question. We're about 1.5 into it, and then oh, there we go. That's actually a good question. Let's do this one, and then we'll wrap things up. How much does the glass itself weigh in a typical top tier LPV? The weights of the scopes themselves seem to vary wildly, but I would think the number of optical elements would be the same. No, the number of optical elements is not the same, and the glass itself is actually fairly heavy. So the body of the scope, all that machined aluminum, if you ever hold it, just aluminum is very, very light. Most of the weight comes from the glass and the glass mounting, right? So each optical element needs to be fixed in place. There's internal assemblies. If depending on the erector ratio, the erector system will have different number of optical elements. So those are somewhat smaller, but they still all have to be held in place very precisely. And when you change magnification, there are different lens groups moving back and forth. All of that adds weight. How much optical elements weigh versus the aluminum, I've never really looked at it carefully. But most of the scope's weight really comes from the glass and from a few stainless steel elements that are part of the erector and adjustment system. Okay, but like I said, the number of optical elements is most certainly not the same. Okay, and there's a clarification here. There we go. For a given magnification range, all the different designs are different. Different manufacturers do it differently, so it's not going to be quite the same. That explains why it seems to be so difficult to design lighter scopes. It's definitely a big part of it. But we learn, right? So first, when higher erector ratio, low power variables popped up, they were all in the 25, 26 ounce range. And then once a manufacturer makes it a couple of times, they learn their lessons and then they start improving, right? One of my favorite recent scopes, the Primary Arms PLXC, it's a 128x24, it's 17 ounces. Primary Arms went to Light Optics Works, threw a bunch of money at them, asked them how light they can make it without compromising anything, and that's what they got, right? They wouldn't have gotten that probably on the first generation of a low power variable by Light Optics Works. But now that we're a couple generations in, the Ray Vortex Razor 1 to 10 is what about 20, 21 ounces, which is pretty good for 1 to 10. The new PLXC is a 1 to 8. It's about 17 ounces, which is really nicely, to me, that's quite impressive. March Shorty, I think, is about 18 ounces. So that now we're a couple generations into it, engineers sort of figured out where they can cut weight without sacrificing performance or reliability, right? But you're right. It's not so simple. It takes work. Have rifle scope manufacturers begun experimenting with other materials for the lenses and/or housings? If they were putting one in space, I doubt they'd build them that way. They have been so. There have been some experimentation. For a lot of things, you can use plastic lenses on the inside, and nobody will ever know, and the performance is quite good. For rifle scopes, most of them don't use anything particularly exotic. One of the things that has been happening, so the aspherical lenses and stuff like that have been sort of proliferating. So nowadays you can make very high performing optical systems using more exotic glass types with different dispersion qualities and stuff like that, and more exotic shapes. So instead of having 3 spherical lenses, one correcting the other, you can have, I don't know, 1 or 2 lens elements that are more difficult to shape, but it's fewer lens elements, so that cuts the weight and stuff like that. Now, to be fair, I do not know for sure if that is exactly what happened in all these more recent designs or not. But with many other optical systems, that's kind of one of the things that's been happening. If they are doing stuff for space, you have very different weight and budget requirements. I do, for my day job, we support a lot of interesting programs, some of the space and some others. And for space money, I could build you a very, very lightweight rifle scope, right? But it's not going to it's not going to be something that's viable for the commercial world. All right, Billy. Thank you for your stream. This is really nice, and I hope to catch another one soon. Thanks and cheers. Good night. Thank you for being here. I really do appreciate it. I try to do this every couple of weeks when I can, sometimes more often. So my plan is to do them on YouTube every couple of weeks, and in between every on off weeks, I'm gonna do live streams on my locals website. And the big advantage there is that I can hold a gun in my hand, I can show you what I'm looking at, and all that sort of stuff. So it's kind of a nice. I have a lot more freedom there. YouTube does not allow me to hold a gun in my hands. Mr. Ross, I enjoyed your discussion concerning BDCs or dialing and holding with mill reticle. Anything more in the future on the subject? So I want to bring back the guys from Tacom HQ. They have a different idea for BDC reticle, and I think it's a nice way to talk the whole mill versus BDC argument and different ways of looking at BDC reticles. That one time when they were here, we were having issues with the audio with the streaming service. That's all been fixed. I actually switched to a different streaming service. So I need to bring them back, and we need to do a couple of things with them. But that's definitely something I want to do. Might not be until October. Maybe sooner, depends what happens with hunting season. Do I still use that Bravo 4 you reviewed? Actually, I gave it to a friend of mine. I think he still uses it. It's a nice scope with a crazy field of view. Their universal reticle. Yeah, at first they call it master reticle. I don't know, now maybe universal. I don't know if I'd necessarily call it universal reticle, but it's a very interesting for Tacom HQ. They're smart guys. I don't know if they're communicating the idea very well, but it is an interesting idea. It's hard for me to say whether that will propagate, but from a standpoint of shooting real things, it does solve what is probably the biggest weakness of BDC reticles, but it looks odd. So how well they will do with it longer term is hard for me to say, but I like clever ideas, so it's worth revisiting. All right. Where were we? I was trying to do something. I'm so wiped out that my brain is just not working well. Oh yeah, I was going to wrap up and go to sleep. All right, guys. One more question. As always, when I start wrapping up, you come up with good questions. One more question, and then I am going to bid you good night and go to sleep. Oh yeah. I talk to them about different products from time to time. Great innovative thinkers. Yeah, the Tacom guys are smart. I like them. They're good people. Still need to go visit them. I still want to build myself a long range rifle using their structured barrel. So that's still on the list. I just probably gonna pay a little bit more attention to that once the hunting season is more or less over. I've got a mule deer hunt and an elk hunt in November. That's in New Mexico. And then in December, I'm going to try to hop over to a friend of mine's lease in Texas for a few days. And the plan is I picked up archery during the last several months, and I'm having a blast with archery. Should probably talk a little bit about archery bow sights as I gain more expertise there. But the plan is to try to shoot a doe with a bow. They have some blinds there, and see. Are you going to the snipers gathering? I have not heard of the snipers gathering until now. When is that? Do you have any idea? The gathering of snipers, U.S. Marine Corps Scout Sniper Association. Blakely, Georgia, November 3rd through 6th. No, I'll be chasing elk deer with I'll be chasing, excuse me, mule deer with a friend of mine. So a buddy of mine got a tag in the beginning of November. Mine is in the middle of November in the same area, so I'm gonna go with him. So to use it as something of a scouting trip, and then middle of November I'm gonna head out to the same area myself, and then also somewhere in between there I'm gonna go to a different part of the state on an elk hunt. It would have been interesting to go, but between my day job and other things, I can't. There are a lot of places I'd like to go, but that ain't happening. All right, gentlemen, good night. Thank you all for being here. I do appreciate your questions. If something comes up, please let me know, and I'll try to address it the best I can. Thank you all, and good night.